think it's probably a good thing if computers just take over music, because computers are a lot more messed up than people, and the more messed up and farther away music gets from music, the better, the healthier it's going to be for music. It's the worst thing about music is that people play it.
Today we are ranking the albums of Faith No More, starting with We Care a Lot in 1985. The band initially starting recording this with no backing, but eventually landed support through Mortem Records, showing off their refusal to adhere to any one style or genre label right from the start. This thing is all over the place. It kicks off on a very funky note with the killer title track, which for accuracy's sake, the clip I played is actually from the re-recorded version from the next album. I know if I don't say that, somebody's gonna get all mad about it.
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
But regardless, sounding somewhere between Red Hot Chili Peppers and the more hardcore influences of Biohazard, though notably this predates the formation of the latter by 2 years. But then immediately a sharp turn into weird post-punk directions with The Jungle. We also get a solo acoustic instrumental in Jim. Why Do You Bother has a little bit of the Stooges energy to it, but with Roddy's hypnotically twinkling synths giving it a completely different dimension, eventually broadening out into some pretty stunning shoegaze territory, and then closing with some classical piano. It's hard to ignore original vocalist Chuck Mosley's lack of range in comparison to Mike Patton, but his own inclination for sounding a bit off-kilter and improvisational works well here. Chuck even comments on his own perceived shortcomings as a vocalist on the song Greed, which alongside Arabian Disco rivals bands like Simple Minds in its embracing of new wave and synth-pop sentiments. Meanwhile, Pills for Breakfast dives back more into those heavier, chuggier Jim Martin riffs that I more closely associate with their peak era sound. Notably, Mike Patton called this bad hippie music and rarely performed most of these tracks, but I consider it to be a very interesting start if lacking some cohesion as a record. It's not one of my favorites, but I find myself strangely entranced while listening to this one and am in awe of just how ambitious it is for a debut, so I'm putting it at good tier. Next up is Introduce Yourself in 1987. Their major label debut, now with the support of Warner Brothers. Still plenty of drifty post-punk energy to faster disco, but I feel like I can hear the heavier rock-oriented guitars and bass taking more of a hold, and I have to admit that the syncopated high-energy Introduce Yourself is pretty fun, right down to the clapping. Once more, We Care a Lot was re-recorded with some lyrical changes for this album, as the label definitely recognized its power as an anthemic single. Overall, though, they still hadn't quite found their best footing, in my opinion. I find tracks like Spirit and And Song too meandering and a little dull as a result. But I do dig the somewhat more aggressive edge of tracks like Chinese Arithmetic, Blood, and R&R, as well as how they weave that into the more atmospheric elements. The Crab song also has a great riff that kicks in about halfway through, but man, do you have to trudge through some boredom before that point. The band actually toured with the Red Hot Chili Peppers on this album before relations with them went seriously south, but that's another story of its own.
I think Anthony deep down feels like I'm a better dancer than he is. I think I shake my booty just a little bit fresher.
Still not an album I love, but I have plenty of respect for it. I'm also going to put this one at good. But as always, this is just my own subjective opinion, so please, as we continue along, put your own rankings down in the comments and hit like if you're enjoying the video so far. But next up, we have The Real Thing in 1989. Mike Patton taking over on vocals here. I had to pick up a new CD copy of this recently, as it was one that was at the bottom of the shelf here when Hunter decided to pee all over it. Yeah, I had to throw away like 20 albums. It was very sad. Some of them I've had since 5th grade. Anyways, this was their big breakout moment. I, like many, had my first exposure to this band with the song Epic, and as a kid, I was so intrigued by the weirdness of the vocals. That and Jim's cameo on Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey 2 years later really cemented them an early spot in my brain that I would later build on.
What a shithead.
But this album is so much more than just that song. Big dramatic opener and from out of nowhere, really signaling the new era of their sound with Mike's powerful singing and those hooky synth lines. continuing to step up their headbanging potential with the bass and drumming on Falling to Pieces. Absolutely love Surprise You're Dead, and the chorus of The Real Thing always gets me bobbing my head. In turn, they were touring with heavier bands at this time as well, in the likes of Metallica, Soundgarden, Voivod, and Primus, but also still some more atmospheric moments on the likes of Zombie Eaters and the Wild Woodpeckers from Mars. If I'm nitpicking, there is a certain level of cock rockiness to this album akin to bands like Poison that I'm not in love with, especially on tracks like Underwater Love, but that's such a minor gripe that mainly only exists because it is not present on the album we're about to talk about. But anyways, I am still going to put this one at perfection. But moving on, we have Angel Dust in 1992. Now, while Mike wrote lyrics on the previous album, this was his first time having input on the direction of the music, and the result, true to the album title, is quite the trip. Still plenty of great radio-ready singles like Midlife Crisis and Everything's Ruined, but plenty of ambitious experimentation too. They do everything here from covering the theme from Midnight Cowboy to having the most metal moment of their career in personal favorite Jizzlobber.
Heavy shit.
I also really love Caffeine, Land of Sunshine, Kindergarten, A Small Victory, and even the bonus cover of Commodore's Easy. Incredible bass work all over this thing, and also lots of interesting use of sampling that is quite the deep dive if you really want to get into it. This is the final album with Jim Martin, who was not a fan of the direction the band had taken with this one. I also feel the need to include a clip from my favorite Patton interview from this time. Would highly recommend watching the whole thing, as he goes to town on that sub sandwich and offers some pretty wild answers.
I know that our guitar player a little earlier said that he didn't like disco. He's one guy in 5 guys. We want to become a disco band. We're here to defend disco from the likes of our guitar player.
That man did not take any interview seriously. And just another reason why he's been one of my favorite frontmen, in addition to his insane range as a vocalist. I wouldn't quite call this a 10 out of 10 because I know RV is a joke, but after the first time it became a hard skip for me, and fans get mad at me when I say this, but I don't really love Be Aggressive either.
I am shocked and chagrined.
But it's like a 9.9 and it's easily my favorite from them, so it is going to perfection at the very top. Moving on, we have King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime in 1995. Trey Spruance of Mr. Bungle takes over on guitar here, and there was a lot of personal stuff going on for many of the band members at this time, so I don't doubt that this and the loss of Jim Martin on guitar very much affected its sound. Roddy in particular was in mourning and had developed a heroin addiction, leading to the keyboards being far less prominent. It was also recorded in New York instead of California, but in spite of this, or maybe because of this, it's arguably even more diverse and experimental than Angel Dust. You've got a very stripped back, straightforward opener in Get Out, but then Ricochet, followed by the smooth jazz, string-infused Evidence, ripe for an evening at the cocktail lounge. That back-to-back with another heavier track in The Gentle Art of Making Enemies, which feels like the early stages of the direction Patton would later go with his Tomahawk project, which in turn gives way to the big brass of Star AD, back into the Jizzlobber metal energy for Cuckoo for Caca, only to go full bossa nova with Caralho Voador, country music on Take This Bottle, and closing with the gospel energy of Just a Man.
My head is spinning.
Some serious high points for me on this one as well, but also some lower ones, and I don't find that the album comes together as a whole in the same way for me as Angel Dust, but it's another interesting and special part of their discography. I'll put it at fantastic. Then we got Album of the Year in 1997. John Hudson now on guitar, and the band recording on what they described as a very hectic schedule, with the band members often rarely in the same place at the same time, many involved with their other various projects and often not on great terms. The band also had initially written songs with touring guitarist Dean Menta, but Patton rejected many of these on the grounds that they didn't have enough balls. The result is definitely a more straightforward record without as much of the wild experimentation, yet one that still feels kind of disjointed. Not a lot that I really love here, but there are some standouts. Strip Search in particular gives more great proto-Tomahawk energy, and maybe a little Peeping Tom in there as well. It gets incredibly ominous towards the end. Similar notes for Last Cup of Sorrow with those distorted whispers, chunky riffs, and eerie synthline. I also like the punctuated rhythms of Naked in Front of the Computer, which minus a DJ feels like it could have been on Incubus's Science, which came out the same year. Mouth to Mouth has one of my favorite synth parts and is a rare moment that actually gets me grooving along, and the very R&B She Loves Me Not is arguably Patton's strongest performance on the record. It's a very melancholy album. Like, listening to it gives me this overwhelming depressed feeling that I most closely associate with being homesick from school in the 90s and having nothing to do but like watch The Price is Right. It's like I can really feel the band sensing an impending end, and with that in mind, it does make me kind of love the very tongue-in-cheek album title even more. I'm going to put this one at great tier. And this would be their final album until 18 years later, where we got Sol Invictus in 2015. The title is Latin for Unconquered Sun, and I don't think I had listened to this one since it came out, maybe once since then, but I remember overall enjoying it when it dropped. Good start with the big dramatic title track sort of setting the stage going into the excellent Superhero. If you ask me, this is like a top 10 song for them. Everyone is bringing their best to the table, from the massive sounding piano on the chorus to Patton's renewed energy in the vocals. Angel dust level stuff. Also a fan of Sunny Side Up and another top-notch, highly dynamic Patton performance on Separation Anxiety, as is Motherfucker alongside Roddy, which almost feels like their own twisted take on a Queen song by way of Bloodhound Gang.
Get the motherfucker on the phone. The phone. Get the motherfucker on the phone.
More Tomahawk energy on Cone of Shame and Black Friday, great build-up to the over 6-minute Matador, and solid closer in the shimmery From the Dead, which, to perfectly bookend things, Patton has apparently referred to as West Coast hippie shit. It really feels like the time away, engaged in so many other creative outlets during the time in between these records, really did everyone well, and it's a shame that now, 10 years later, they seem to be right back in the same rut with each other that they found themselves in the 90s. The latest interviews point to the final nail in the coffin for the band, but given their track record, maybe we'll get another one in like 2033. So hey, if you're watching this then, drop a comment and let us know where they're at. Regardless, I see this one listed a little bit lower than the last two albums on Rate Your Music, but personally, I think it makes for a much stronger listen start to finish, and if this is their swan song, like, I'd kind of be okay with that. So I'm putting it at fantastic, and you may hear the dogs racing down the stairs in the background too. Y'all check out this playlist for more alternative rock rankings, including like Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, or this for your personal YouTube recommendation. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.